All right. So, Wendy, I'm just going to go ahead and go over a few of these, and I'll hand it back over to you, okay? So just remember that we are broadcasting live and recording, so please do not disclose any confidential information on the phone, please. If you want to get credit for CMECUs, please announce yourself in the chat box, your full name and your organization, and we'll send those out each month.
Is there a way to move that background?
And this is our disclosure and accreditation statements. We do have case consultation reimbursement opportunities through Molina and Blue Cross Blue Shield. If you're interested, please email me, Zach Johnson, or my supervisor, Kevin Whirling. And so since we're getting a late start, we're just going to have you do your roll call, announce yourself through chat box, if you would, please. And let me hand it back over to Wendy. Wendy, if you want to go ahead and share your screen. There we go. And thanks everybody for sitting tight today. And I'm going to have Carol introduce our speaker before we get started for just a moment, and then take it away. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Adolescent Health Initiative. Today, we are pleased to have Wendy Linebrink Allison, who is the Program Manager for the New Mexico Crisis and Access Line, come on and talk to us today about how we can be active, engaged participants in keeping people safe and sound, and some thoughts we have that she's going to share with us about suicide prevention training. Thank you so much, Wendy, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I am passionate about this topic, and so I look forward to talking with you all about it today. Some of the things that we're going to remind you of before we get started is that suicide is really personal. Many of us that are on this call might be survivors or have friends, relatives, coworkers that may have attempted or even died by suicide. Or some of us may be attempt survivors ourselves. So we want to ensure that you think about taking care of yourself during this training and connect with your support system after this presentation. If anything that we talk about today happens to trigger you during the discussions, we want to make sure that you're well and in a safe place as well. We also want to remind you that you can't be held responsible for what you did or did not know today based on how you could have helped somebody yesterday. So, you know, we might give you some more tools today that will help you for futuring pacing the support that you can give to individuals. But at this point, you might not have known that this was an option yesterday. And I don't want you guys to kick yourselves and say, oh, if I would have only known. I want you guys to remember that this is a new tool for your toolbox that you can put in there so as that you can support people that might be contemplating thoughts of suicide or experiencing mental health concerns, and how can you help them beyond here. We're going to talk about suicide in America and the impact that it truly has within people. We're going to review the signs and symptoms that people who experience suicide might be displaying. And then we're going to talk to you about how you can help somebody that's in that place. And this particular method is called QPR, which means question, persuade, and refer. And so we're going to teach you how to apply that methodology to people. And then we're going to briefly talk about some of the resources that are available to support you when you are working with people that are contemplating suicide. So we're going to begin with knowing that about almost 1 out of every 5 Mexicans reported that they have seriously considered killing themselves at some point within the last month. And oftentimes those are things that go unreported, unidentified, and undiscussed. New Mexican suicide rates for our youth population have historically been nearly twice as high as the national rates. And we rank 4th highest among all states in the nation of death by suicide. It's the 2nd leading cause of death among all New Mexico youth, and in 2007, approximately 14.3% of adolescents said that they had attempted suicide. Now, if 14.3% of adolescents are saying that they attempted suicide, think about all the ones that don't disclose that information because of the stigmas that come along with talking about those kinds of things. To put it in a bigger perspective, there's about one suicide every 14 minutes, which means that 121 people are dying by suicide every day, which is the equivalent of a Southwest jet airliner filled with passengers. Now, this is nationwide, not in our state, but it's still too many people that are dying, and it's such a preventable death that if we can begin having these conversations with people and talk to people about it, then maybe we could prevent some of people from taking that next step that results in their untimely death. We can utilize the QPR method in doing this, and by doing this, we can help people to think about other options that they have, because when you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, you often cannot think about how to question what's going on in your mind, how to persuade yourself from thinking about something else, or how to even think about accessing a referral, because you already feel as if you are overwhelmed by your emotions when you're in this place. And so we need QPR gatekeepers, is what we call them, to help people recognize signs and symptoms, because this is the most preventable cause of death, and we are all responsible to take action and assist with preventing a death from a suicide attempt. So I encourage you to think about asking a question, because it can really save a life. So the model of QPR, I'm going to ask you guys if you all can think about any reasons why we talk about suicide prevention and why we encourage you to think about questioning people that you, when you recognize signs and symptoms, or persuading them or referring them. Do any of you have any thoughts? Well, I can share with you that I don't know if your phones are muted by the host and you can't share as a result of that, but I can share with you that the reason that we teach QPR is because people are dying, and you are the person that's sitting right next to somebody who's experiencing some concerns, and so you're the one that's going to notice a difference, and you're the one that's going to make a difference in those people's lives. It's up to us to recognize these communications that people are expressing to us. I would like you to think about CPR and QPR in the same type of context. So CPR is a health-related practice that allows people to help people when they're experiencing physical health concerns, and they are showing signs that they are in distress in some way. And we can see this, it's noticeable, it's obvious. And so when you apply CPR, you are supporting a person in the moment until professional help can come and assist that person at the next stage of their recovery process with that physical diagnosis that they're experiencing. So a lot of times people think about mental resources in the same capacity, such as this QPR methodology, is that we can support people by applying QPR and helping them in the moment when they're experiencing some mental health or behavioral health concerns, until we can support them to help themselves or to get somebody else to help them beyond that moment, so that they can the assistance and the support, the advice and the help that they need to kind of further that intervention process that we're beginning with QPR. So the first step that we're going to look at is questioning. And what does questioning look like? So when we're thinking about questioning, we need to understand what are the common warning signs. Do any of you all know of any common warning signs that you might think of to look out for, or would you like me to just talk about the common warning signs? Take a minute to think about it before we go on. So common warning signs include the obvious, right? Threats to hurt or kill themselves. That's the big one that everybody goes to right away. They're talking about it, so I must be able to say something to help them through this moment. We hear people talking about making a plan, then when we hear people talking about making a plan, it's talking about collecting means, it's talking about making funeral arrangements, it's talking about putting their affairs in order so that if something happens to me, then who's going to take care of my pet, or who's going to take care of my house and selling it and getting the money from those kinds of things. So we often hear about end-of-life planning when we're experiencing suicide warnings within people. People that wish to die and have a preoccupation with death are some other common warning signs that we should be watching out for. The obvious is if people experience anxiety or depression, then that's a huge flag that they have something going on in their life that we need to talk with them so that they don't get to that place where they contemplate ending their life. If they're not sleeping, then they're not getting enough rest, and so that's something that we need to talk with people about when we start recognizing that they're not getting enough rejuvenation within themselves. People are often misusing and abusing substances, whether it's a legal or an illegal substance. They are overusing, and that's a warning sign that they might not care about what's going on with them, or they might not feel like they have any other options, and that's their coping mechanism, so as that they can withdraw and isolate from either their problems or from people. If they talk about having no reason to live, like, oh, nobody cares if I'm here, you know, that's a big, huge warning sign. Who cares if I'm here anyways? I just don't see why I should go on living. That's, you know, a verbal, no purpose in life kind of statement that we should be watching out for. When people identify that they're feeling trapped or that they have no way out, like I've tried and I've tried and I've tried and I just can't figure out what to do anymore, and I'm feeling, you know, just completely stressed out all the time, that's feeling trapped. And those are some of the verbal cues that you should be watching out for when people begin to feel trapped, as if they feel as if there's no way to escape this situation that they're going through. As a result, people begin withdrawing from friends, family, and society. And they often become angry, irritable, and engage in high-risk behavior, apparently without thinking. And we're going to talk more about some of these warning signs in a little bit more depth for you guys. But what we need to remember is that these are all statements of hopelessness and despair, and it's up to us to recognize these things and support people through those moments. The more warning signs we see, the greater the risk is. Some warning signs are not obvious, some are very subtle, but you should take any sign that you see seriously, because you never know when this might be the day that they attempt and die as a result of that attempt. When we're persuading people, we often know that it's scary to make change, and we know that life is hard, and we know that it sometimes hurts to try to continue to participate in activities that you feel as if are not creating a pathway to a successful way of doing things. And sometimes we can't see those successes when we're doing them. And so when we're persuading people, we also need to be cheerleaders for people. So don't keep things to yourself. If you're seeing things, part of persuading people is talking to people. And when we're talking with people, we're talking about how to help people. And so it's pretty easy to start helping people when we hear the direct verbal warning signs. Oh, I've decided to kill myself. I wish I were dead. I'm going to attempt suicide. I'm going to end it all. If Kevin doesn't ask me to the prom, then I am just going to die. Or if I don't get into college, then I just don't know what I'll do, and I just don't think I can go on. And so these are warning signs that we hear from our youth population that we need to be aware of. You know, I know a lot of you all work with young parents with children, and the signs and symptoms that you might hear them saying regarding direct verbal is that I'm just so tired of trying. I'm just so tired of feeling this way. And so, you know, those are things that when people are saying them, we need to not try to problem solve for them, but we need to ask more directed questions to see what's going on and to see how we can further support them, because what is going on with them might not have anything to do with what we're assuming is going on. And so don't make an assumption. Ask them the question, are you thinking about suicide when you're hearing these things, so that it can open up a conversation? Because most of the time, the conversations that we have are very indirect, and they're the result of indirect warning signs that we're seeing. My family would be better off without me. I won't be around much longer. Don't worry about me. Or pretty soon, it'll all be over and nobody will have to worry about it anymore. So those are the indirect warning signs that people often don't take the time to think about, that those could be signs of suicide that are going through people's head. We next have the behavioral clues. And the behavioral clues that people experience that we should be watching out for include a previous attempt, gathering means, the substance use and misuse, self-destructive acts like participating in non-suicidal self-injury such as cutting, the choking game, the misusing of alcohol, sleeping with multiple partners, unprotected sex, sudden interest or disinterest in religion is a huge indicator that somebody might be experiencing thoughts of suicide. And then, if somebody's running away, they're trying to escape something. And so what are they trying to escape? And having those conversations about, how can I help you be happy where you're at, rather than feeling like you need to withdraw from your current situation, and what's going on in your current situation that is so hopeless and helpless that you feel like you need to escape from it. Oftentimes people don't think of perfectionism as a behavioral clue, but if somebody is always trying to make sure that everything is perfect and they're trying to please somebody, whether it's themselves or somebody else, there's always going to be that level of trying to get to that next step. And if you don't feel as if you can ever achieve that perfection, then you might feel as, why should I keep going? And so perfectionism is also a huge behavioral clue that people need to watch out for, because it creates a lot of additional stress in one's life. Which then leads us to those situational clues that we should be thinking about, being expelled from school or fired from a job. If you're arrested or you're about to be arrested, if you fear of punishment, if I tell my mom or dad that I'm pregnant, then they might kick me out of the house. And so what am I going to do? Or if I talk with them about the abuse that's going on, then are they going to be supportive of me? And so continuing on in those hopeless situations. An unwanted move. So oftentimes when we work with people that experience low income or less opportunities or lower education levels, they have to move in order to create opportunities. And sometimes that move creates additional stresses. And so if you have a move, for instance, a parent moves in with their parent, and then you have a grandchild or a child in tote during that move, the child might not understand why they have to feel as if they have to be, in their minds, punished and leave all of their friends. And so those are concerns that occur within our younger population where they didn't want to move. They're being uprooted from the life that they know, and they are struggling with making new friends, or they're struggling with acclimating into this new school. So those are concerns that we can identify within our youth population. If they are experiencing financial problems, I just lost my job, or I'm losing my benefits, or I am heard about layoffs coming up and I'm worried that I'm going to be on that list, that's a concern, and maybe they'd be better off without me. My life insurance might take care of somebody else. And so that's a situational clue that we can watch out for. If they're a victim of assault or bullying in any way, shape, or form. And then when we're thinking about our older population, the fear, or somebody with a developmental diagnosis, they might feel like they're a burden to others. And so, feeling like they don't want other people to have to take care of them or to experience the financial impact that will occur as a result of this illness that's in their life. Those are some things that are big situational clues. I was just at an event recently, and I was reminded about some of the other hopelessness that occurs within our very rural and frontier communities, is that a lot of our youth depend on sports activities to engage in finding a way to find a path that allows them out of that community. And so when somebody gets hurt in a sports injury, then that can create a lot of hopelessness, because now I don't know how I'm going to achieve finding a way out of this community, because scholarship was my only way out. So those are some situational clues to watch for. Other related clues include disturbances in your eating, your sleep. Chronic headaches, stomach aches are signs that anxiety is being experienced. And then this creates menstrual irregularities as well. So the way that you can help people, I've already been kind of talking with you about as we've been identifying these signs, is that we can ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? A lot of times people think by asking this question, I'm putting the thought into their head. But what we as preventionists want to share with you is that asking the word question and saying the word suicide is not going to put the thought into their head. If you're already seeing these signs and symptoms, they are probably already thinking about it. And by you asking the question, it's like a relief. Okay, somebody noticed, somebody cares, and I'm so glad you asked me. And so let's have this conversation, because I didn't feel like I could come and talk to anybody. And so you're opening up the door for conversations by asking the question. And we need to understand that the signs that we were just looking at indicate that, you know, there are experienced hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness, and it's up to us to talk about it so as that we can help them find pathways to think about overcoming the obstacles that they're experiencing, because no matter how hard they've tried, they feel as if they're not accomplishing something. And so having somebody on their side is essential to preventing somebody from dying by suicide. So again, going back to QPR and beginning with questioning, you know, the direct approach is the best approach. Are you thinking about killing yourself? You look very miserable. I wonder if you're thinking about suicide. You know, when people are as upset as you seem to be, they sometimes think that death is the best option. And I'm wondering if you were feeling that way. And talking in these capacities is the best way, because if you ask somebody, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Or are you so unhappy lately that, you know, you don't know what to do? This can result in getting you to a response that might not lead to them discussing their thoughts of suicide with you, because maybe they'll talk about, you know, what's going on, but they're not going to talk to you about the actual death that they're contemplating, because to them, when you're asking questions in an indirect way, sometimes death is ending the pain. Sometimes death is the solution. And so when you ask in an indirect way, it's a great way to open the door, but you do need to ensure that you get to this place where you're being direct and you're asking them, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? And when you're asking these questions, I want you guys to be reminded to look at people when you're asking these questions, because their nonverbal clues will say so much. And think about how you're asking the question. So you're not thinking about suicide, are you? Or you wouldn't do something stupid like suicide, would you? You're just kidding about killing yourself, aren't you? You know, asking in these ways influences a negative response from the person you're talking with. And it makes people feel as if you can't handle the emotions that they're experiencing. And so they often will close down and feel as if you're not a resource that they feel comfortable sharing with. So you need to ensure that you're practicing asking this question in a way that is warm and welcoming, not sterile and a checklist that you have completed on your templates at work because you're required to ask this, but in a way that shows that you really care about what they say and the outcomes and how you can support them through that. So some tips on asking this question are, if in doubt, don't wait. No time like the present is better to ask this question. However, if you are in a place where you really don't have time to dedicate having this discussion with them, then right now might not be that best time. And so right now You might need to say, I've noticed some things going on and I'm worried. So can I set up some time to talk with you later, so that you can ensure that you're fully devoted to talking to them in that moment about what's going on and making them feel valued as a person, and not watching your watch or checking the clock on the wall because you really don't have the time to be there. It shows people that you don't appear to care. And so when you're asking these questions, you need to ensure that you're allowing people to know that you truly care about them, and that you're willing to talk openly and freely with them, that you try to prevent any bias or stigmas about your own personal beliefs coming into these conversations, because what we think and we feel and we believe is very different than what other people think, believe, and feel. And so sometimes if we say something about the content of our own beliefs and it is not in line with their beliefs, then that might immediately shut down a conversation. And we want to do everything possible as gatekeepers to ensure that we're continuing to have these conversations in a way that allows people to continue to come back and talk to us, because these things don't happen overnight. People aren't going to be miraculously cured of their mental health and their behavioral health concerns because we've began this conversation today. People need this continual conversation to come back and revisit, to continue to figure out how to take pathways forward. And when you're having these conversations, they want their business private, just like you would want your business private if you were the one that was experiencing these things, because it might be your colleagues that you're recognizing these signs and symptoms within. It's not always the clients that we're engaging with, or it could be a friend or a family member. So think about the relationship that you have with this person when you're thinking about how to ask this question with people. And be bold and make sure that your resources are available to you, so is that you understand that you're not the only person that needs to help this person through this, and that we need to together create a team that helps people to feel like they have other people that they can come and talk with. And that's where we're going to talk about the resources at the end. So just to reinforce what we've been talking about, ask the question, are you thinking about killing yourself? Be aware of your nonverbals, because they say so much to people about if you care or if you are compassionate about what is going on within their life and their conversation that you're having with them. And, I want to remind you that if you can't ask the question, find someone who can. I am a person who can ask this question, but when I had a situation occurring in my life where there was a loved one close to me that was potentially experiencing thoughts of suicide because I saw a bunch of risks identified within that person, I was not the one that I felt would be the best person to ask them that question because of the relationship that I had with them. And so I had to train somebody else to ask that question because I wanted to make sure that when the question was asked, that it wasn't shut down immediately, because I'm a social worker and their philosophies about social sciences and the social programs that within our community are not in line with my philosophies. And so I had to ensure that the question came from somebody that had more philosophies in line with that person. And so I had to train my husband to ask his dad how to ask this question. My husband is a computer programmer. He's not in the social sciences world at all. And so, just think about who's the right person to ask these questions. And if you don't think of anybody that can ask this question and you don't feel comfortable asking this question, well, that's why we have the New Mexico Crisis and Access Line here, because we are open 24/7, 365. And if you can't ask the question, then you can call us to ask them to ask the question for you. I have so-and-so in my office with me, and they're experiencing such and such, and I was wondering if you can talk to them because I'm worried about them. You haven't expressed that you're worried that they're having thoughts of suicide, but our counselors are going to engage that conversation further. And make sure that you're dialing that phone number from your client or your friend or your family members or your colleague's phone, so is that now they have the number available to them when they walk away from this conversation with you. Because it's important that we persuade people beyond the moment to stay alive. We need to make sure that we feel as if we are not interrupting them during that time of persuasion of trying to keep them alive. We need to persuade them to tell them that I'm on your side and I care if you live or die. And I'm here to listen, and ensuring that you're giving them the full attention and not rushing to judgment. How many times do we hear people and we begin conversations and we're like, oh, yeah, I know, I got it, is what's going on in your head. And when that happens, you immediately stop listening to what the person has to say. And when you stop listening to what the person has to say, you might miss the key essential component as to what they need support with in that moment. So don't rush to judgment, don't rush to a solution, because we need to be able to hear people and meet them where they are. We need to be remembered that suicide is a perceived solution, and it is a permanent solution to a very temporary problem. And so as somebody that's having these conversations, remind people that, no, you might be experiencing a really hard time right now, but it's worth it to keep trying. I know other people who have experienced similar things, and I'm not telling you it's going to be easy, but I'm telling you that you're going to be in a better place if you continue to try to work through these things and take the next step. Make sure that you're calm, because if you look as if you are uncomfortable, then they are going to notice those things, and again, the conversation will shut down. Because it's up to us to ensure that we're offering hope in any way, shape, or form. Again, we're building a team. You don't have to be the only one involved. Who else might be able to help you? You know, if I'm in a meeting or if I'm in a training, and I can't pick up the phone when you call, then who else are you going to call? Create that list of safety contacts with them, so as that they always know that no matter what they're doing, that somebody eventually will pick up the phone, even if I have to call 10 people to get there. But call those 10 people, make that list of your priority, because together we can help people from getting into this place of hopelessness. And make sure you're having these conversations with other people. You know, get the team that has been created by that person together, so as that you can talk about, you know, if this is said, then this is what works, or if this is what's going on, then offer this solution. And so make sure that you all are talking to people and creating a solution that involves the person themselves. So oftentimes people feel as if people need to solve their problems for them, and what we need to do as preventionists is try to encourage them to figure out a way to solve the problem on their own and think about ways to help themselves, because what works for me might not work for you, because I have a different support system. I have a different way of handling my emotions. I have a different way of getting to the solution than you do, and that way doesn't work for me. So don't rush to a solution when you're trying to persuade people to live. Tell people that you are concerned. Show you care. Be patient. Be persistent. Ensure that you are putting your hand out to them and allowing them to accept the hope that you're offering. And remember to create a place where we're engaging people in thinking about how to begin talking about integrating into friends, family, and society, how to help them feel as if they're not trapped, how to encourage them to think about not using alcohol or drugs, how to think about ways that will help them when they're experiencing rage or anger, how to help them out of this place of hopelessness. Because your willingness to listen and to help brings hope to people, and it makes all the difference. It makes people feel as if you're on their side. And when people feel as if you're on their side, you can refer them with positive intent to help them get support beyond this potential conversation that you're having with them. So don't assume that they want you involved just because you're asking the question and you're persuading them to stay alive. You need to ask them if you can be involved and ask them, if you don't want me to help, then who do you want to help? Because maybe they're glad that you've asked the question, but their business is private and they don't feel as if you're the person that they feel that they can trust. And it doesn't mean that you're not a good friend to them. It means that they have their own emotional biases and stigmas that are preventing them from having conversations, and maybe they would feel more comfortable having this conversation with somebody else. So make sure that you're, one, asking to be involved, and two, encouraging people to think about who else can be involved. And when you're trying to encourage people to think about who else can be involved and you're referring them to other resources, think about who else it is that can be involved, and think about how you can get to that place to get other people involved. So questions to ask would include, are you willing to talk to somebody? Who do you want to talk to? Do you have somebody already that you can talk to? Would you like me to make an appointment with you? Would you like me to go to an appointment with you? Would you like me to tell somebody about this so as that you can continue this conversation later because you don't feel comfortable talking with me about it right now? So do you have the number for the crisis line? Do you have the number for your therapist? Do you have the number for your best friend while they're on vacation in Puerto Rico? Whatever's going on, make sure that the plans that you're doing involve making sure that they're not alone, because being alone is the worst place for somebody who's contemplating suicide. People might feel as if they have nobody, and so when they feel as if they have nobody, the one place that they can always reach somebody is at the New Mexico Crisis and Access Line. So when you're referring people, remind people to get a team together. And then after you've had these conversations, follow up. There's no one and done. You need to check back in with people. Pick up the phone, ask them, how are you doing today? Did you try the steps that we talked about? Let them know that you care about them in this moment and about what happens to them in the future, because showing you care can save a life, and any willingness from the person to accept that help, even if it's in the future, will always lead to a good outcome and potentially prevent a death. The best referral that you can give to somebody is the opportunity to help them get help in this moment in time. If they're not willing to get help in this very moment in time, the next best referral you can offer to people is to get a commitment from them to accept the help and work with them to help make the arrangements with them to get that help. Sometimes people aren't there yet, and so the third best referral would be to reinforce that, talking to somebody about this would really help you through these moments. And so here's a number for the crisis line. Here's a number for a therapist in your community. Here's a support group that you can go to, and helping create a plan for them to follow up on beyond this moment. Remind people that their story isn't over and that there's still a lot more life to live. And while you feel hopeless, helpless, and worthless right now, tomorrow's a new day, and you never know what that will bring. All efforts to persuade someone to stay alive instead of attempt suicide will be met with agreement and relief. We often don't think about those things. We often don't know if that's what actually happened as a result of the encounter, but oftentimes later in life, people will come back to you and say, thank you for caring. Thank you for having that conversation with me. Thank you for taking the time to show that there is hope beyond this moment when I'm experiencing these emotional distresses. Because when you apply QPR, when you question, you persuade, and you refer people, you plant the seeds of hope, and hope is what helps prevent suicide. Together we can make a difference. So I was asked to leave 15 minutes for questions. We are at that mark. Does anybody have any questions? I can't hear anybody.
Wendy, our remote and our thing is going a little nuts over here. Can you hear us now? Just fine?
I can hear you now.
That one was not my fault, I promise.
Or the 4-year-olds.
That's right. Again, I apologize that it was at your expense that I learned this lesson today, but thank you for your presentation today. I'm going to stop recording, everybody, and so we can speak freely. If anybody has any questions, either over the phone or in the chat box, please feel free to ask. And also, just a final note, I did put a link for our survey in the chat box. If you would just take a few minutes to complete that. It's just a couple of questions, takes less than 5 minutes. It's really important to us as we depend on it for future funding. Thank you, and I'll leave the meeting open for a little while, okay?